This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show in Brazil, where an indigenous forest protector named Paulo, Guajajara, was shot dead in the Amazon by illegal loggers on Saturday. It's the latest attack in a wave of violence targeting indigenous land protectors since the election of Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro last year. Guajajara was killed when he and another forest protector were ambushed by a group of illegal loggers inside the Arariboia reservation in the northeastern state of Maranhão. He was part of a group called Guardians of the Forest. Guajajara spoke to Reuters in September about his efforts to save the Amazon.
We are protecting our land and the life on it, the animals, the birds, even the tribe who are here too. There's so much destruction of nature happening. Good trees with wood as hard as steel being cut down and taken away. I'm scared sometimes, but we have to lift up our heads and act. We are here fighting.
Attacks against indigenous people in the Amazon have spiked since Bolsonaro came to office. His administration's work to open the Amazon even further to logging, mining, and agribusiness companies while violating the land rights of indigenous peoples. Earlier this year, 8 former environment ministers warned Bolsonaro's administration was systematically destroying Brazil's environmental policies, with one former minister saying Brazil is becoming an exterminator of the future. To find out more about the situation in the Amazon and the murder, we speak to 2 guests. João Coimbra Souza is a field coordinator and legal advisor for Amazon Watch. He's joining us from São Luís in the northeastern state of Maranhão, the state where Paulo Guajajara was murdered. And in San Francisco, Christian Poirier is program director at Amazon Watch. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's go to Brazil to speak with our first guest, João Coimbra. Can you explain what took place in the Amazon, what you understand happened to this guardian of the Amazon?
First of all, good morning. Thank you, Amy, for having me. So, the situation that the Guardians of the Forest face today is the struggle for survival and the protections of their way of living. The indigenous people on the Amazon, they have little protection from the state government, from the federal government, and as you said, Amy, the rhetoric from Bolsonaro's speeches further entitles landowners and logging and illegal miners to invade furthermore indigenous lands. So the struggle, that the plight that indigenous people have is to protect the forest, to protect their way of living and their whole life. So what happened to Paulino is that he went hunting with his cousin when they were ambushed by 5 gunmen, and Laércio, luckily enough, he was shot in the arm, so he could hide. Unfortunately, Paulino was fatally shot in the head and died right away. Laércio then, the other guardian of the forest, as you said, Laércio Guajajara, he ran 10 kilometers while wounded to a close-by aldeia, which is how indigenous villages are called here in Brazil. Then he was helped by his fellow Guajajara and took to a hospital. And this is why we know all of this in such great detail.
I want to go to a clip right now of the Guardians of the Forest that was produced by Survival International. Paulino appears in the clip as the Guardians coordinator, Olímpio Guajajara, warns of the risks to their lives.
We're here in the Rari Boys Indigenous territory. We are the guardians of the forest. Loggers are paying gunmen to kill some of the guardians of Rari Boys. We're all worried about these threats. Gunshots have been fired at some of the guardians' houses. We don't want war, we want to resist. Here in Rari Boys, there are two indigenous peoples, the Guajajara and the Awa, who are the most vulnerable people in the world. We want the Brazilian authorities to help protect the lives of the guardians whose lives are threatened.
So I'd like to bring in Christian Poirier as well into this conversation, program director at Amazon Watch. If you could talk about the community you have worked with as well, the Guajajara, one of the largest indigenous groups in Brazil, and talk about who the Guardians are and how what they're fighting fits into the whole fight for sustainability on the planet and to save the lungs of the planet, the Amazon rainforest.
Yes, thank you, Amy. The Guajajara, like other indigenous groups in Brazil, have been abandoned by the state to defend their territories with volunteer groups, basically policing massive territories. Araraboye territory is 1,600 square miles. That's larger than Rhode Island. And they're doing this without any federal support. And what they're doing to defend these territories, these are some of the last forests left in the state of Maranhão, which is the state that straddles both the Amazon and the Cerrado biomes, incredibly important forests that are left in this area. They're doing this on behalf of all of humanity because they are protecting the critically important Amazon forests that sustain our climate, protect our climate, power, or I should say, fuel the rainfall all over Brazil, but also here in this country, in the state of California, rainfall is slackening due to the fact the Amazon is being decimated today. And the Guardians of the Forest are doing this work, therefore, on behalf of all of us, but without the support that they deserve. Their rights are enshrined in Brazil's constitution, their rights to territory and to their way of life. Yet they have been systematically deprived of these rights. And what we witnessed today, or 2 days ago, with the murder of Paulo, was an example of that, a manifestation of the violence that's growing in these communities.
I want to turn to another leader of the Guardians of the Forest. Democracy Now! Spoke to Sonia Guajajara during the climate strike march here in New York in September. She's a leader of the Brazilian Indigenous Peoples Articulation.
I'm here today to participate in the climate march, bringing the voices of the indigenous peoples of Brazil to denounce all the destruction of the environment, the destruction of the Amazon, and the legalization of a genocide against indigenous people.
Da Amazônia e a legalização do genocídio dos povos indígenas no Brasil. Há 519 anos, os povos indígenas do Brasil resistem.
For 519 years, indigenous people in Brazil have been resisting, and we've been resisting by fighting against the political and economic powers that, under the name of development and in the name of progress, are authorizing more and more exploitation of our natural resources.
Autorizando, a exploração dos recursos naturais, explorando minérios,
exploiting mines, exploiting the rivers, and it's directly affecting our way of life.
Afetando diretamente os nossos modos de vida. E a Amazônia está queimando, neste momento.
The Amazon is burning at this exact moment. Lots of territories are on fire.
Nós atribuímos o aumento desses incêndios a esse discurso, do governo Bolsonaro de.
We attribute the increase in the fires to the rhetoric of the government of Jair Bolsonaro that incites attacks, that incites invasions, and incites deforestation. The practices of the Bolsonaro government are consolidating this government as the biggest enemy of indigenous people and the environment.
Over the summer, as the fires raged in the Amazon, Sonia Guajajara said in a statement, "We're putting our bodies and our lives on the line to try to save our territories. We've been warning for decades about the violations we've suffered across Brazil. The predatory behavior of loggers, miners, and ranchers has been getting much worse under the anti-Indigenous government of Bolsonaro, who normalizes, incites, and empowers violence against the environment and against us," she said. As we begin to wrap up, João Coimbra, as we speak to you in Brazil right now, how are people protecting themselves, particularly Indigenous community, and who are these loggers? Who is believed killed Paulo Paulino?
So Maranhão historically is a place of a lot of land conflicts, and mostly of those conflicts began with the colonization of Brazil. So we have large landowners that are going forward with the expansion of their territories. When you see how well protected the indigenous lands are, you understand economically wise why they want to invade such territories. So the killing of Paulo Paulino Guajajara and the attack that also suffered Laércio Guajajara, it's directly linked to that idea of eternal expansion of the agribusiness, which is something that we understand that it's impossible. However, the presence of the guardians of the forest, it represents heavy losses on the illegal business of logging and the selling of woods. So it's and when you see that all those landowners and their economic power, it always translates to political power as well for the oligarchies presented that take part that is part of the conjunctural context here in Maranhão. So everything's connected, and in that sense of the political rhetoric of Bolsonaro's and the invasion of those lands and the overgrowing power of the larger landowners.
And Christian Poirier, in your last comment, you're here in the United States with Amazon Watch. President Trump is close to Jair Bolsonaro. In fact, Bolsonaro is called the Trump of the Amazon. What are you calling for here?
We are calling for a rigorous and independent investigation into the murder of Paulo Guajajara, which is part of a growing trend of violence against indigenous peoples in Brazil. 135 indigenous peoples were murdered in 2018, according to the Indigenous Missionary Council in Brazil, and that was a 23% increase over the previous year. This year, we're expecting to see an enormous spike in this kind of violence and the impunity that comes with it. So we need to see rigorous governance installed in these territories that are falling victim, and their communities falling victim to violence, to impunity, to destruction, to the reckless expansion of the agribusiness sector, of logging mafias. And we need to see the state step in where it has been so brutally absent to address this crisis, which is a human rights crisis. It's a crisis for humanity because of the implications of the destruction of the Amazon and its peoples that are fighting to defend it. The Guajajara are one of the great hopes of the Amazon, as are indigenous peoples in general. We need to support them. We cannot have regimes like the Jair Bolsonaro regime, which is true and a mirror image in some ways to the Trump regime here in this country. We absolutely need to fight these despots on many levels, including on the international level. There are markets that are sustaining these actors, these logging mafias, the worst actors in Brazil's agribusiness sector, that are exporting commodities to the north. We are buying these products. We are complicit in what's happening today. And our financial institutions like JP Morgan Chase and BlackRock, BNP Paribas, Santander in Spain, are fueling this crisis with their money to the worst actors in the soy, in the beef, and in the timber industries, for example, that are decimating the Amazon and its peoples today. We have a responsibility in the North. In fact, PIB, the indigenous organization from Brazil that Sonia Guajajara represents, is currently traveling in Europe, across 12 countries in Europe, to denounce this mounting crisis to the rights of indigenous peoples, to the future of the forest, and to our collective future. They are touring Europe to bring a message to the world: indigenous blood and not another drop. And what we witnessed today, or 2 days ago, was the spilling of this blood. We can no longer tolerate what's taking place today. We must all act to end this crisis.
Christian Poirier, I want to thank you for being with us in San Francisco, and João Coimbra Sousa in São Luís in the northeastern state of Maranhão in Brazil, both with Amazon Watch. When we come back, we go to San Francisco to speak with the unhoused as we deal with the growing crisis of homelessness. Stay with us.